Welcome back, and thank you for tuning into Midnight Affairs Tales. We appreciate every single one of you. We'd love to know what part of the world you are watching from right now. Let us know in the comments. Now let's dive into today's story, Chapter 1. The ballroom glowed under the crystal chandeliers, white gold light shimmering off laughter and half-filled glasses. In the center, Suman's diamond necklace flashed as she leaned in close to Rajiv, her lips curling into a smirk. "He can't touch us," she said, her voice a silky dagger. "Arjun's just a loyal dog. He'll never bite the hand that feeds him." Arjun stood at the edge of the crowd, his knuckles pale around his glass. He wasn't the man she thought. His eyes didn't see the expensive suits or polite clinks of cutlery. He saw the shadows behind each smile, the tremor in Mira's hand as she poured champagne. "He can't touch us." The words burned in his chest, a war drum to a soldier's soul. Rajiv raised his glass in a mocking toast. To family. To blood. His laughter cut across the music, smooth, smug, and reeking of secrets. Arjun's mind flickered to every mission briefing he'd sat through. Every time he'd been told it was impossible, and every time he'd proved them wrong. He moved through the crowd like a ghost, slipping past fawning relatives and socialites with diamond smiles. In the corner, Mira watched him, her eyes bright with unspoken fear. He gave her a tiny nod. Just enough. As the music swelled, Arjun leaned against a marble pillar, his military stance hidden in civilian clothes. He listened to Rajiv's lies and Suman's laughter, every word a blade to Mira's throat. "He can't touch us." Arjun's jaw tightened. They thought he was a tame dog, but a soldier never forgets how to hunt. And tonight, in this gilded cage of chandeliers and champagne, Arjun vowed he'd make them choke on every secret they'd tried to bury. "Before we move ahead, I just want to say, your support truly means everything. We're building something special here, and our next big goal is reaching 10,000 incredible subscribers. If you're feeling the emotions in these stories, imagine what's still to come. Subscribe now, be part of this amazing journey, and let's keep growing together. Your one click can make a real difference." Let's continue the story. Earlier that evening, the glow of the Davis mansion had seemed warm. The scent of roses from the garden mixed with wood smoke from the hearth. It was almost enough to make Arjun forget the knots in his gut. Mira's hand had been soft in his, but her fingers trembled. "You're quiet tonight," she whispered, her eyes searching his. "Is something wrong?" He forced a smile. "Just tired," he lied. The words tasted like ash. The dinner table was set like a stage, polished silverware, crystal glasses, each detail manicured to perfection. Suman wore a pearl-white sari that caught the light with every turn of her head. She was the perfect hostess, offering laughter and sweet-laced lies to every guest. Rajiv was worse. His booming voice filled the room, each joke a performance for the fawning crowd. Every time he leaned back in his chair, his hand slipped to Mira's shoulder, possessive and cold. Arjun watched it all. He knew these small gestures, like the coded signals he'd once used to pass orders in enemy territory. Only here, the war was hidden under silk and smiles. Dinner was a blur of rich flavors and forced conversation. Arjun caught the tightness in Mira's smile, the way her laugh didn't quite reach her eyes. When Suman asked about his work, "Still chasing ghosts, Arjun?" Her tone was sweet poison. He bit back the retort. He wasn't here for petty wars. He was here for the truth buried in the cracks of this family's perfect mask. As the evening wore on, Arjun excused himself, slipping out onto the balcony. The night air was cold and biting, a slap of reality. He watched his breath fog in the dark, thinking of every lie whispered in that room. "He can't touch us." They thought him harmless. But they'd forgotten, wolves wear many skins. The next morning, the Davis mansion was quiet as dawn broke, a fragile calm that only deepened the chill in Arjun's gut. He rose early, like every day since his army days, muscles tight with discipline, breath steady in the cold air. But this wasn't a drill. This was a war of shadows and silk, and the enemy was sleeping under his roof. Arjun moved through the house silently, observing. The smallest details spoke volumes. Rajiv's polished shoes near the door, the faint scent of expensive whiskey still clinging to the air. Suman's phone buzzing on the kitchen counter quickly snatched up when she saw him. Mira stood at the stove, stirring tea in the morning light. She looked up, startled. "You're up early," she said, voice carefully neutral. "Couldn't sleep," he replied, eyes scanning her face. Her lips were pale, her eyes ringed with worry. He reached for her hand, but she pulled away, just a flicker, but enough. His gut tightened. She was slipping away from him, inch by inch. As Suman entered the kitchen, her smile was as smooth as always. "Sleep well?" she asked, each word dripping fake sweetness. Arjun met her gaze, his face unreadable. "Like a soldier on watch," he said, his voice calm steel. He could almost hear the way her breath caught, just a fraction, but enough. He retreated to his study, every step echoing with purpose. He opened his laptop, connecting with Vikram's encrypted line. Static crackled, then Vikram's gravelly voice. "You ready for this?" Arjun's jaw set. "I'm done playing house," he said quietly. "Let's see how deep this rot goes." In that moment, he wasn't a guest or a husband. He was a soldier again, eyes open, senses honed, and ready to hunt. The mansion slept, but Arjun's mind raced as he moved like a ghost through the silent hallways. The soft carpet muffled his footsteps, the distant ticking of the grandfather clock marking every second like a heartbeat. He paused outside the study, an island of faint light in the darkness. Suman's voice drifted out, low and urgent. "It's all in place, Rajiv. The funds are secure." He's too blinded by loyalty to see what's right under his nose. Arjun's jaw clenched, the words striking him like a blow. He leaned closer, breath shallow, every muscle coiled tight. Rajiv's voice followed, smooth, with that dangerous edge he always masked with laughter. "Good. Mira's name keeps it clean. She'll never betray us. She's too weak." Arjun's vision narrowed. Mira's name, again and again. He pressed his ear closer to the door, each word a knife twisting deeper. Suman's voice turned icy. "If he ever gets close, we'll bury him in his own past. You know how to spin a story, Rajiv, just like we did with his military record. Let him dig. We'll make him wish he never came here." Arjun's breath came harsh and fast. His past, the classified missions he never spoke of, the lines he'd crossed for the country, threatened to resurface in his mind like old ghosts. He forced himself to step back, controlling the surge of anger threatening to explode. No rash moves. He was a soldier. He needed proof, not blind fury. He turned and melted back into the darkness, his mind racing. Mira's face flashed before him, soft eyes, always too trusting. Was she a prisoner in this gilded cage, or a willing accomplice? In the cold hallway, Arjun paused and exhaled, steadying himself. He knew what he had to do. Tonight wasn't the night to strike, but it was the night he chose his side. And he wouldn't back down. The next morning was bright and cold, the winter sun painting the world in white light. Arjun watched Mira move around the kitchen, her hair pulled back in a neat braid, her hands trembling ever so slightly as she poured tea. "Arjun, you're up early again," she said, her voice light but strained. Her eyes flickered to the window, anywhere but him. He studied her face, every line, every hesitation. "Couldn't sleep," he said quietly, his mind echoing with last night's revelations. "We need to talk, Mira." She froze, teacup hovering midair. "About what?" "About what's happening behind those locked doors," he said softly. "About your name on those accounts." "I heard them, Mira." Her shoulders tensed, the color draining from her face. "You heard them?" "Arjun, it's not what you think. Then tell me." He pressed, his voice calm but unyielding. "I see how they control you. I see the fear in your eyes. But I need the truth, Mira. Not half-truths, not silence." Tears welled in her eyes, shimmering in the morning light. She set the teacup down with a small clink, her hands shaking. "They've woven me into this. I didn't know at first, I swear. But now, it's like chains around my throat. If I speak, they'll ruin you. They'll use what they know about your past to destroy everything you are." Arjun's chest tightened. Her words rang with a quiet desperation he couldn't ignore. "You think I care about my name," he said, his voice rough. I care about you, but I can't protect you if you keep shutting me out. She sank into a chair, burying her face in her hands. I don't know how to fight them, Arjun. I'm so tired of pretending. He knelt beside her, taking her trembling hands in his. Then let me fight for you. Let me in, Mira. No more secrets. In that fragile morning light, their eyes met, haunted and hopeful, a silent promise of war and salvation. The day passed in a blur of half-spoken words and wary glances. Arjun kept close to Mira, the weight of their conversation a constant thrum in his chest. But she offered no more answers, just weary smiles that never reached her eyes. That evening, Rajiv called a family meeting in the sunroom, a place usually reserved for polite gossip and evening tea. The air was heavy with unspoken tension as they gathered. Suman in her ivory sari, Mira sitting stiff and silent, Arjun's eyes locked on Rajiv. Rajiv's voice was honey-smooth as he addressed them. Family means everything. We trust each other, protect each other. That's what makes us strong. Arjun said nothing, but his jaw tightened. Every word was a lie wrapped in silk. Rajiv's gaze flicked to Arjun. I hope you remember that, son. You're part of us now. You're bound by blood and honor. Arjun's lips curved in a faint smile, but his eyes were ice. I remember my oath, Rajiv. But my honor isn't tied to your lies. A flicker of irritation crossed Rajiv's face, quickly masked by another charming smile. Careful, Arjun. You wouldn't want to stir trouble where there's none. Mira sat with her hands clenched in her lap, her knuckles white. Arjun reached for her hand under the table, a silent promise. He wasn't leaving her alone. Suman's eyes narrowed, catching the gesture. We all have our roles, she said softly, almost sweetly. Some of us lead, some of us follow, and some learn to keep quiet. Arjun's chest burned with the weight of their veiled threats. But he didn't flinch. He squeezed Mira's hand, firm, steady, unbreakable. At that moment, he knew this wasn't just about money or family politics. It was a war for Mira's soul, for the truth buried in these velvet-draped halls. And he'd fight it to the end. The following morning, Arjun retreated to his small, Spartan study, a room that had once been his sanctuary. He shut the door behind him and sat at his desk, the weight of what he'd heard clawing at his mind. He opened his laptop, the glow of the screen washing over his face in the cold morning light. Vikram's encrypted chat window blinked to life. Updates. Arjun typed quickly, his fingers flying. A few seconds later, Vikram's reply popped up. Their charity funds. Accounts overseas. All in Mira's name. It's a perfect front, laundered clean. Arjun's jaw tightened. How deep does it go? Deep, Vikram responded. They're using her as a shield. If anything blows up, she'll take the fall. A cold fury spread through Arjun's veins. He thought of Mira's quiet sobs the night before. Her whispered confession, they own me. He leaned back in his chair, memories of old missions flooding his mind, covert ops in foreign lands, the feel of dirt and sweat and adrenaline. He wasn't just some puppet in a family drama. He was a soldier, trained to see the truth behind the smoke and mirrors. Arjun's phone buzzed, a text from Mira, come upstairs. Please. He closed his laptop and moved through the silent house, each step heavy with purpose. Mira sat on their bed, her eyes red from crying. I don't know what to do, she said, her voice raw. They'll ruin you if you push them. Arjun knelt before her, his hands on her knees. Mira, listen to me, he said, his voice steady. I've faced worse than them, but I need you to trust me. Tell me everything you know, every detail, no matter how small. She looked away, tears sliding down her cheeks. I'm scared, Arjun. So am I, he whispered, cupping her face in his hands. But we can't let fear win. Not this time. Later that night, Arjun waited in the darkened living room. He could feel the tension coiling around him, thicker than the shadows. The old grandfather clock ticked like a countdown, and every tick echoed in his chest. Rajiv entered first, his expression smug and relaxed. You're still up, son? He asked, feigning concern. Something on your mind? Arjun stood slowly, his eyes steady. We need to talk. Suman appeared in the doorway, her lips curved in that too-sweet smile. Talk about what, dear? About the money, Arjun said evenly. About the offshore accounts. About how you've wrapped Mira up in all of it. The room fell silent, the air electric. Suman's smile slipped. Rajiv's eyes flickered with annoyance, then amusement. I think you're mistaken, he said coolly. You're letting your imagination get the better of you. I'm not imagining anything, Arjun shot back, his voice low and lethal. I have the records, the transfers, and I know exactly what you're doing. For a moment, Rajiv's mask cracked, the arrogance slipping to reveal something darker. Careful, Arjun, he said, his tone suddenly sharp. You're not part of this family by blood. Remember your place. Suman stepped forward, her tone saccharine. You don't understand the way things work, darling. Mira's name is just a convenience. Nothing more. Convenient for you, Arjun growled. A noose for her. Silence stretched out, thick and suffocating. Mira appeared in the doorway behind him, her face pale, her eyes wide. Arjun reached for her hand, his grip firm. You think I won't fight for her? He said, his voice calm steel. You think I'm afraid of you? He leaned forward, his eyes locked on Rajiv's. I've faced real monsters, Rajiv. You're just another snake in a suit. For the first time, Rajiv's smile faltered. And in that moment, Arjun knew the battle lines had been drawn. The storm had begun. Arjun could feel it in the air, a crackle of tension, a hum beneath the surface. That night, sleep was a luxury he couldn't afford. He lay beside Mira, her head on his chest, her breathing shallow. Do you trust me? He asked softly, his fingers brushing her hair back from her forehead. She nodded, but her voice trembled. I do. But they're my parents, Arjun. They'll destroy everything. Then let them try, he murmured, his eyes on the dark ceiling. I've spent my whole life fighting for what matters. I won't stop now. She closed her eyes, silent tears slipping down her cheeks. He kissed her forehead, a silent vow in the darkness. The next morning, Arjun rose early, dressed in simple jeans and a jacket that hid his tense shoulders. He met Vikram at a quiet diner on the edge of town, their usual covert rendezvous. Vikram's eyes were hard, his laptop open on the worn wooden table. They've got layers of protection, shell companies, lawyers, politicians in their pockets. But I'm close, Arjun. One more piece, and we'll have them. Arjun's hand clenched into a fist. We can't leave Mira's name on those accounts. If this goes public, she'll take the fall. I know, Vikram said grimly. But trust me, I've got a plan. I'll find the thread that unravels it all. Arjun nodded, a soldier's calm settling over him. Do it. And Vikram, thank you. Vikram's eyes flickered with a rare warmth. You're a stubborn bastard, Arjun. But you're fighting the right fight. As Arjun drove back to the mansion, the winter sun glared off the windshield, a blinding white that made him squint. He thought of Mira's haunted eyes, the tremor in her voice when she said, I'm scared. He was scared too, but he'd never let it show. In the quiet storm brewing behind that mansion's perfect facade, Arjun was ready to strike. The winter air bit at Arjun's cheeks as he stepped out of the car, the mansion looming like a fortress of secrets behind him. He took a deep breath, feeling the soldier in him rising sharp, focused, unflinching. Vikram was already there, waiting in the small, nondescript warehouse they'd claimed as their base. The place smelled of old wood and stale coffee, the only light a single bulb casting long shadows. Arjun entered, his boots silent on the concrete floor. What have you got? He asked, his voice steady, every word clipped with purpose. Vikram spun his laptop around, the screen a mosaic of spreadsheets, offshore transfers, and phone recordings. They're sloppy, Arjun. Greedy. They never thought anyone would look this close. Suman's accounts, she funneled the first payments through a children's charity, using Mira's name as the face of it. Rajiv's the one pulling the strings. He's got ties to a developer in Dubai, a politician here, a fixer there. Arjun studied the flickering lines of data, his jaw tight. And Mira? Vikram looked up, his eyes hard. She's the face. The scapegoat if it all falls apart. But she's clean. No direct transfers, no signed documents. It's all forged around her. A small breath of relief escaped Arjun. Good. We keep it that way. He leaned over the table, tracing the flow of money with his finger, Every line a trail of blood in this war of whispers. We expose this. We have to be sure. No mistakes. Vikram nodded, tapping a file. I'm working on decrypting Suman's personal email server. If I can get in, we'll have everything, the paper trail, the voice memos, the deals they thought were buried. Arjun's face was a mask of resolve. Do it. No half measures. Vikram gave a small, humorless smile. I always knew you'd find your way back to the fight, Arjun. He straightened, rolling his shoulders. This isn't about me. It's about Mira. And it's about making sure they never touch her again. The war room was quiet, but crackling with tension. Two men, old soldiers in a new kind of battle. Every click of the keyboard, another shot fired in the darkness. That night, the mansion's walls seemed to close in around Arjun. He sat on the edge of the bed, the moonlight tracing harsh lines across his face. Mira slept fitfully beside him, her breathing ragged with nightmares. Arjun watched her, his heart heavy. He remembered the early days of their love, her laughter like a bright melody, her eyes shining with trust. Now, she was a shadow of herself, caught in a web spun by the very people who claimed to love her. He rose quietly, pulling on a thick sweater to guard against the winter chill. In the hallway, he paused outside the study where Rajiv and Suman had plotted. He pushed the door open, the scent of old leather and rich mahogany washing over him. The room felt cold and alien now, every elegant curve of the furniture tainted by the secrets it held. Arjun crossed to the massive oak desk, running his fingers over the polished surface. His eyes caught on a small drawer, the lock glinting in the dim light. He pulled out a thin strip of metal from his pocket, an old army trick, and worked the lock with practiced precision. The drawer clicked open, revealing a stack of ledgers and a small black recorder. He flipped through the papers, numbers, names, amounts that made his stomach twist. This was it, the proof they needed, the hammer to crack the shell of lies. He slipped the recorder into his pocket, heart pounding. He knew this was dangerous. If Rajiv or Suman found out, they'd tighten their grip on Mira, or worse. As he closed the drawer and stepped back, he caught a faint reflection in the glass cabinet, Mira, standing in the doorway, her eyes wide and glistening. You're going to fight them, aren't you? She whispered, her voice trembling. Arjun walked to her, cupping her face in his hands. I'm going to protect you, he said softly. No matter what it takes. The next morning, the air was tense with a brittle calm. Suman breezed through the breakfast table like nothing was amiss, her laughter too bright, her gaze too watchful. Mira sat beside Arjun, her shoulders hunched as if she could make herself disappear. Arjun sipped his tea slowly, every sense on high alert. His mind raced with plans, how to protect Mira, how to outmaneuver the vipers sitting across from him. Arjun, you seem distracted, Rajiv said smoothly, a predator's smile on his lips. Something you'd like to share? Arjun met his gaze evenly, his voice calm. Just thinking about the future, he said. How the past always has a way of catching up. A flicker of unease crossed Rajiv's face, so quick most would miss it, but Arjun didn't. He knew that look. It was the same look he'd seen in enemy eyes, a flash of doubt in the face of unwavering resolve. Suman set her cup down with a soft clink. We all have pasts, Arjun. Some things are better left buried. Not if they're poisoning the present, Arjun countered, his voice low. Secrets have a way of surfacing when you least expect them. Mira's hand trembled under the table, her fingers tightening around his. In that small gesture, he felt her fear and her trust. After breakfast, Arjun slipped away to the study, pulling out his phone to call Vikram. I've got the ledgers, he said, his voice urgent. And a recorder, Rajiv's voice, discussing offshore transfers. Vikram's voice crackled through the line. That's the final piece, Arjun. This is the noose they tied around Mira's neck, and now it's going to strangle them instead. Arjun closed his eyes, taking a breath. Good. Let's finish this. He looked out the window at the snow-covered grounds, the white expanse so calm, so deceiving. But beneath the calm, the storm was brewing, and he was ready. That evening, the Davis family gathered in the dining hall, a glittering stage of chandeliers and polished silver. The warmth of the fire crackled in the hearth, but Arjun felt only the cold undercurrent of deceit in every smile, every glance. Suman sat at the head of the table, her pearls glinting as she poured wine with a practiced elegance. "Arjun," she said sweetly, "you've been working so hard lately. I hope you're not overextending yourself." Arjun met her eyes, his voice calm but laced with steel. "I've always believed that truth is worth any effort." Her smile faltered just a moment, so quick it could have been a flicker of candlelight. But Arjun caught it, and so did Mira, who sat beside him, her fingers brushing his under the table in a small, trembling gesture of solidarity. Rajiv raised his glass. "To family," he said smoothly. "To loyalty." Arjun's lips curved in a ghost of a smile. "To loyalty and what it truly demands." The toast echoed in the hushed air, but beneath it lay a silent war of words. The clink of crystal was a shot across the bow, each sip of wine another inch of ground claimed in this battlefield of polite smiles. The conversation turned to trivial matters: business, charity events, the weather. But Arjun watched every word, every flick of Suman's eyes. When she leaned forward, her voice dripping honey. "You know, Arjun, Mira's always been such a good girl, so trusting." He didn't miss the warning in her tone. "She's strong," Arjun said quietly, his voice steady. "Stronger than you think." Suman's eyes glinted, and for a heartbeat, her mask slipped, revealing something cold and venomous beneath. Mira's hand trembled in his, but Arjun squeezed back, steady, unyielding. In that moment, he knew the lines were drawn deeper than ever. They were playing a dangerous game, but he was done playing by their rules. Later that night, Arjun sat alone in the study, the ledgers spread out before him like a map of betrayal. The numbers blurred together, money, blood, and lies woven into a single, damning tapestry. The soft creak of the door pulled him from his thoughts. Mira stood there, her face pale, her lips parted as if she'd been about to speak and lost the words. "Arjun," she said, her voice barely a whisper, "there's something else, something I haven't told you." He rose slowly, his eyes locking onto hers. "What is it?" She swallowed, her hands twisting together. "There's a man. He's been meeting with my father. I saw them in the garden late one night. I thought it was just business, but the way they spoke, the things they said, he's not just a friend. He's part of this." Arjun's brows drew together. "Who is he, Mira?" "I don't know his real name," she said shakily. "They call him the broker. He's the one helping them move the money. He has connections overseas, people who make things disappear." Arjun's mind raced, the pieces falling into place with a sickening clarity. The broker, an invisible hand guiding every dirty deal, every lie. "Why didn't you tell me sooner?" he asked, his voice low but calm. "I was scared," she confessed, tears brimming in her eyes. "I thought if I told you, they'd come after you too. He threatened me, Arjun. Said he'd ruin your name, your past. He knows about your missions." Arjun took her hands, his fingers wrapping around hers like iron. "Let them try," he said, his voice hard. "They think my past is a weakness, but it's my strength." She looked up at him, her breath trembling. "You really think you can fight them all?" He leaned closer, his forehead touching hers. "I'm not just fighting for me, Mira. I'm fighting for us. And I'll fight until there's nothing left to take from them." The night was silent but heavy, the air in the mansion thick with a tension that refused to break. Mira lay in bed, her back to Arjun, her shoulders curled tight like she was trying to disappear into the mattress. Arjun watched the moonlight trace her outline, the faint rise and fall of her breathing. He knew she wasn't sleeping, knew her mind was caught in the same web of fear and guilt that haunted his own. Finally, he reached out, his hand resting gently on her waist. "Mira," he murmured, his voice a low rumble in the darkness, "you don't have to face them alone." She turned slowly, her eyes red, her lips parted. "I'm so tired, Arjun," she whispered. "Every day I feel like I'm drowning, and I can't. I can't find the air." He pulled her close, his arms wrapping around her like a shield. "I won't let them drag you under," he said fiercely. "I swear it." Her tears soaked into his shirt, hot and silent. "You don't know how deep this goes," she sobbed. "They've always had a way of making me feel small, powerless." Arjun pressed a kiss to her forehead, his voice steady. "I know exactly how they work. They break you down piece by piece, until you think you're nothing without them. He paused, his words a quiet vow. But you're not nothing, Mira. You're everything to me. And they're going to learn what happens when they push too far. She looked up at him, her breath ragged. Promise me you'll come back to me. Promise me you won't let them destroy us. I promise, he said softly, his voice like steel wrapped in velvet. They may have built this prison, but I know how to break it. And I'm not leaving you behind. In the quiet of that night, surrounded by the weight of betrayal and the flickering hope of love, they clung to each other, two hearts locked in a battle that would test everything they were. The next morning, the mansion was wrapped in an eerie stillness, as if the walls themselves were holding their breath. Arjun moved through the house like a shadow, every footstep measured, every glance calculated. Mira sat at the breakfast table, her fingers tracing the rim of her cup, her gaze distant. She looked so fragile in that moment, like a porcelain doll caught in a storm. Rajiv entered, his presence filling the room with a smug certainty that grated at Arjun's nerves. Arjun, he said, his voice all silk and poison, you're up early. I have a lot on my mind, Arjun replied evenly, his eyes never leaving Rajiv's. Things that don't add up. Rajiv gave a small chuckle, settling into his chair. Life rarely does, my boy. Best not to dig too deep, or you might find things you'd rather not see. Arjun leaned forward, his tone calm but deadly. I'm not afraid of what I'll find. Are you? A flicker of irritation crossed Rajiv's face, gone in a heartbeat. But enough. He forced a smile. Always so intense, Arjun. You should relax, enjoy the comforts you've been given. Arjun's jaw tightened. I didn't come here for comfort. Across the table, Mira's hand trembled. She caught Arjun's eye, a silent plea passing between them. Hold on. Don't let them win. The conversation shifted, but the tension stayed thick in the air. Every word was another move in the silent war that simmered beneath the surface. Later, as Mira walked him to the door, her voice was a trembling whisper. They're watching you, Arjun. Watching us both. I know, he said, his hand brushing her cheek. Let them. They'll see what happens when they push too far. She pressed her forehead to his chest, her breath shuddering. I'm so scared. He held her close, his voice steady. Then let them be scared of us. That night, Arjun and Mira sat on the balcony, the cold air biting at their skin. The sky was a black ocean above them, the stars distant and unfeeling. Mira wrapped her shawl tighter around her shoulders, her breath fogging in the winter air. I've never told anyone this, she said, her voice soft but shaking. Not even you until now. Arjun turned to her, his eyes steady. I'm listening. She swallowed hard. When I was younger, I thought my family was perfect. My father, he always made me feel like a princess. My mother, she told me I was special, that I could be anything. But it was all a game. Every kindness had a price. Her voice cracked, and she looked away, tears glinting in the moonlight. I learned to smile even when I was drowning, to laugh when my heart was breaking, because that's what they wanted, a perfect daughter who never questioned, never doubted. Arjun reached for her hand, his fingers wrapping around hers. You're not that girl anymore, Mira. She shivered. But I still feel her inside me, so small, so afraid. He drew her closer, his voice a low promise. That's what they want you to feel. They want you to believe you're powerless. But you're not. Not anymore. Her eyes met his, wide and haunted. How can you be so sure? Because I've seen your strength, he said firmly. You're still here, still fighting, even when everything feels impossible. That's not weakness, Mira, that's courage. She blinked, tears slipping down her cheeks. Do you really believe that? I do, he whispered, his thumb brushing away her tears. And I'll believe it for both of us until you can see it too. In the hush of that moment, they found a fragile piece, two souls battered but unbroken, clinging to each other in the storm. The following day dawned gray and cold, the mansion's grandeur a stark contrast to the war raging inside its walls. Arjun met Vikram in a shadowed alley behind the town's old bookstore, the place chosen for its quiet anonymity. Vikram's breath fogged in the chill. I found the last piece, he said, his voice low and urgent. Suman's emails. She's been working with this broker for years. They're planning to move everything out of the country within a week. Arjun's eyes narrowed. And Mira? She's the keystone, Vikram said grimly. If she stays quiet, they keep their shield. If she speaks, it all falls apart. Arjun nodded slowly. Then we make sure she speaks. But safely, no more of their games. Vikram's gaze was steady. This will expose them all. Once it's out, there's no going back. There never was, Arjun said, his voice like iron. As they parted, Arjun felt the weight of the choice ahead pressing on his shoulders. When he returned to the mansion, the house was quiet, the stillness almost suffocating. Mira was waiting for him in their room, her eyes wide, her breath shallow. "What did Vikram say?" she asked, her voice trembling. "That it's almost over," Arjun said softly, brushing a lock of hair from her face. "But I need you with me, Mira. I need you to trust me completely." She nodded slowly, her eyes searching his. "I'm trying, Arjun. I'm so scared, but I trust you." He pulled her close, his hand on the small of her back. "Then that's all we need." In the hush of that moment, with the weight of truth pressing in on them, they found their resolve. The lie that had bound them for so long was about to break, and they were ready. The morning sun was a pale glow in the sky, but inside the mansion, the air was electric with unspoken words. Arjun stood at the window, his gaze on the frost-covered garden below. Each breath he took was deliberate, measured calm masking the storm in his veins. Mira sat at the edge of their bed, her hands twisting nervously in her lap. "Arjun, what happens now?" He turned to her, his eyes steady. "No? We play their game better than they ever could. No more waiting. No more hoping they'll change." She looked up, her eyes searching his face. "What if they hurt you?" Arjun reached out, his hand cupping her cheek. "They've already tried," he said quietly. "They've used my past, my silence, your love, twisting it to their own ends. But today we start to fight back." A soft knock interrupted them. Suman's voice, sweet and false, drifted through the door. "Mira? Arjun? Breakfast is ready." Arjun gave Mira a reassuring nod before stepping into the hall. Suman was waiting, her sari perfect, her smile like polished glass. "Good morning," she said lightly, as if nothing was amiss. "You look tired, dear. Restless night." Arjun's smile didn't reach his eyes. "Planning tends to do that." Her brows lifted. "Planning? For what?" He leaned closer, his voice low and calm. "For the truth, Suman. You should try it sometime." For a heartbeat, her mask slipped, just enough for him to see the flicker of fear behind her practiced grace. But then she laughed softly, brushing past him. "Oh, Arjun, always so dramatic." As he watched her walk away, Arjun felt the tide turning. The game had shifted, and he was done playing by their rules. Later that night, Arjun retreated to his study, the low lamplight casting shadows on the papers spread before him. He felt the weight of every number, every line, a ledger of betrayal, meticulously built by those who called themselves family. He dialed Vikram, his fingers tapping out a steady rhythm on the desk. When Vikram answered, his voice was a low murmur in the quiet room. "They're moving fast, Arjun. The broker's meeting with Suman tonight, final arrangements before they shift everything offshore." Arjun's eyes narrowed. "Where?" "The greenhouse," Vikram said. "They think no one's watching there. But I'll be close. I'll record everything." Arjun's mind worked quickly, mapping the mansion's grounds like a battlefield. "Good. We need them on record. We need them trapped by their own words." He ended the call, his breath slow and controlled. In the reflection of the window, he saw his own face, hard lines and steady eyes. He was no longer the guest in this house. He was the reckoning. As he stepped into the dark hallway, he paused outside Mira's room. She opened the door before he could knock, her eyes wide with worry. "Arjun, what are you planning tonight?" He brushed his thumb across her cheek, his voice low. "I'm going to finish this, Mira. I'm going to show them they can't hide behind you anymore." She reached for him, her fingers tight around his wrist. "Promise me you'll be careful." He pressed a kiss to her forehead. "I promise. I'll come back to you, no matter what." And in that promise, whispered in the quiet dark, they found their strength. The greenhouse was a cathedral of glass and steel, moonlight pooling in silver rivers across the floor. Arjun moved silently between the ferns and orchids, the scent of damp earth and cold air thick around him. He kept to the shadows, every sense alert. Beyond a row of rose bushes, he saw them, Suman and a man in a dark coat, his face obscured by the collar pulled high. The broker. Their voices were hushed but urgent, the conversation a series of half-spoken promises and veiled threats. "Once the transfer's done, we vanish," the broker said, his tone cold and precise. "No loose ends. Mira's name stays buried in the paperwork. No one will trace it back." Suman's eyes glittered in the low light. "Good. And Arjun?" The broker laughed softly, a sound that grated at Arjun's ears. "The soldier? He's a nuisance, but nothing I can't handle. His past will be his undoing." Arjun felt his heart pound, a cold fury settling in his gut. They thought they could erase him, erase Mira, like words on a page. He raised his phone, recording every word. Each syllable was a nail in their coffin. As he listened, he caught a glimpse of Suman's face, calm, certain, her lips curved in a cruel smile. And for a moment, he saw not the gracious hostess, but the predator beneath. The broker leaned closer, his voice dropping. "Leave it to me. By tomorrow, he'll be nothing but a memory." Arjun's jaw tightened. Not if he had anything to say about it. He slipped away as the conversation ended, his mind racing with the final pieces falling into place. Mira's life, his honor, it all hinged on what he did next. In the silence of the greenhouse, he made his vow. They'd tried to bury him in the shadows. But tonight, he dragged them all into the light. Arjun slipped back into the mansion like a ghost, the weight of what he'd heard in the greenhouse heavy on his shoulders. His mind raced with the broker's threats, each word a blade he wouldn't let cut him down. He found Mira in their room, her face pale as she looked up at him. "Did you find them?" she asked, her voice trembling. "I did," he said, his voice quiet but charged with fury. "They're planning to leave you to take the fall. Suman, the broker, this was never about family, Mira. It was always about using you." Her eyes filled with tears, her hands clutching at the blanket around her. "I don't know what to do, Arjun. I feel like I'm sinking deeper every day." He knelt in front of her, his hands firm on her shoulders. "Listen to me," he said, his voice low, urgent. "I recorded everything tonight. Suman's orders, the broker's promises. We're done being their pawns." She swallowed hard, her tears spilling over. "But there's something else, something I didn't tell you." He stilled, his breath catching. "What is it?" She looked away, shame and fear warring in her eyes. "I knew about the broker. I didn't know who he really was, but I thought if I stayed quiet, maybe it would keep you safe. I thought if I played along, they wouldn't hurt you." Arjun's chest tightened, a wave of pain and protectiveness crashing over him. "Mira, why didn't you tell me?" "Because I was afraid," she choked out. "I thought I could handle it. But I was wrong." He cupped her face, his thumbs brushing away her tears. "It doesn't matter now," he said softly. "What matters is that we're done hiding. No more secrets. No more lies." She nodded, her breath hitching. "No more lies," she whispered. And in that moment, raw, broken, but united, they found a fragile strength neither of them had known they still carried. The next morning dawned cold and brittle, the sky a sheet of slate above the mansion's elegant facade. Arjun felt every second crackle with tension as he moved through the halls, the weight of Mira's confession still heavy on his heart. Mira was by his side, her hand trembling in his as they stepped into the sunroom. Suman was there, her poise unshaken, her smile as smooth as always. "Arjun, Mira," she said sweetly, gesturing to the table set for breakfast. "Join us." Arjun took a slow breath, his eyes on Suman. "We need to talk." Suman's smile didn't waver, but her eyes flickered. "Of course. Sit down, dear." Mira sat, her shoulders rigid. Arjun remained standing, every line of his body tense. "I know about the broker," he said evenly. "I know about the offshore accounts, the fake charities, everything." For a moment, Suman's mask slipped, a flicker of ice behind her practiced calm. "You're mistaken, Arjun," she said lightly. "These are family matters you couldn't possibly understand." "I understand perfectly," he shot back, his voice cold steel. "You've built your empire on Mira's name. You've used her trust as your shield. But it ends today." Rajiv entered then, his eyes narrowing. "Careful, boy," he said softly. "You're treading on dangerous ground." Arjun didn't flinch. "I'm not afraid of you, Rajiv. You've taken everything you can from us, but you won't take her soul." Suman's lips curved in a small, humorless smile. "Such dramatics," she said. "You think you're the first man to stand up to me? You'll end up just like the others, broken." Mira's breath hitched beside him, but Arjun didn't waver. "I'm not here to play your games anymore," he said quietly. "I'm here to end them." For the first time, Suman's calm slipped, a flash of something darker in her eyes. And in that silence, Arjun knew he'd finally struck a chord that couldn't be ignored. The sunroom was silent as Arjun's words hung in the air, heavy, final. Suman's expression hardened, her smile gone. "You think you can fight us?" she said softly, her tone dripping with disdain. "You're a soldier, Arjun. You should know when the battle's already lost." Arjun's jaw clenched. "I've never walked away from a fight I believed in." Mira's hand tightened around his, her fingers ice cold. "They won't let you go, Arjun," she whispered. "They'll use everything they know about you, about your past." Rajiv leaned back in his chair, his eyes glinting. "That's right. All those missions, all those secrets. Do you really think the world will look kindly on a man with blood on his hands?" Arjun's voice was quiet but unyielding. "I did what I had to. For my country. For what was right. I'll never apologize for that." Suman rose, her presence suddenly towering. "You're naive if you think honor will protect you here. We own every whisper, every secret. And we'll bury you in them if we have to." Mira's breath came in ragged gasps, tears slipping down her cheeks. "Stop," she begged. "Please, stop this." Arjun pulled her close, his hand at the small of her back. "I won't let them break you," he said softly. "I won't let them turn your love into another weapon." She pressed her forehead to his chest, her sobs muffled against him. "I'm so sorry, Arjun. I didn't want this." "I know," he murmured, "and I'll fix it." He looked up, his eyes meeting Suman's cold gaze. "You've underestimated me," he said calmly. "You've underestimated both of us, and you'll regret it." For the first time, Suman didn't have an answer, just silence, cold and final. And in that silence, Arjun felt the weight of their fight shift, like the first crack of thunder in a storm that would wash everything clean. Arjun woke before dawn, the chill of the winter air seeping into his bones. He sat on the edge of the bed, staring at the faint light creeping through the curtains. Mira lay curled beside him, her face peaceful in sleep, but he could see the exhaustion etched into her features, the price of years spent playing someone else's game. He rose silently, slipping into the hallway with practiced stealth. Downstairs, the house was quiet, too quiet, like a battlefield before the first shot. He found Mira in the kitchen later, her hands wrapped around a mug of tea, her eyes distant. She looked up as he entered, her expression softening with a flicker of hope. "Arjun," she murmured, her voice raw. Are you sure about this?" He stepped closer, taking her hands in his. "I've never been more sure," he said, his tone quiet but unbreakable. "They've treated you like a pawn, Mira, but you're not. You're the key to everything they've built, and they're terrified of what you'll say." She shivered, tears welling in her eyes. "I've been so afraid for so long, Arjun. Afraid of them, of what they'd do, and of losing you." He brushed her hair back, his thumb gentle on her cheek. "You won't lose me," he said softly. "They want to break us, because together we're the one thing they can't control." A soft rustle at the doorway drew their attention. Suman stood there, her expression icy calm. "Such touching words," she said, her voice smooth as glass. "But words won't save you, Arjun. Or her." Arjun turned to face her fully, his jaw tight. "We're done being silent," he said evenly. "We're done letting you decide who we are." Suman's smile was thin and brittle. "Then you've chosen your war," she said quietly. "And you'll find I fight to win." Arjun didn't flinch. So do I. The day of the gala arrived with a bitter chill, the air outside sharp as a blade. Inside the mansion, preparations hummed with false cheer, flowers in the halls, silver polished to a gleam, laughter that didn't quite reach the eyes of those who wore it. Arjun moved through the house like a shadow, every step deliberate. He checked his phone, Vikram's last message a lifeline in the chaos. I'm in position. Cameras rolling. Tonight, we end this. Mira was in their room, her dress a deep sapphire blue that shimmered in the lamplight. She looked at him as he entered, her eyes wide and searching. Arjun, what if this doesn't work? What if they still find a way to twist it back on us? He crossed to her, his hands cupping her face. Then we fight again, he said firmly. As long as we're together, they'll never truly win. She nodded, her breath trembling. I trust you, she whispered. He kissed her forehead softly, his voice a low promise. Then let's finish this. Downstairs, Suman and Rajiv played the perfect hosts, welcoming guests with bright smiles and practiced warmth. But beneath the surface, Arjun could see the tension coiling in their every move. As he walked through the main hall, he caught snippets of conversation, polite laughter, shallow compliments. But in every glance, he saw the cracks forming, the carefully crafted facade starting to slip. Vikram's voice crackled softly in his earpiece. I've got everything set. When you're ready, we let the truth speak. Arjun's lips curved in a faint, grim smile. Almost there, he murmured. He found Mira at the edge of the crowd, her posture calm but her eyes alive with fear and determination. He reached for her hand, their fingers locking together, a silent promise in the press of skin against skin. Are you ready? He asked, his voice low. She took a breath. I'm ready, she said, her voice trembling but clear. Let them see who we really are. And with that, the final act began. The gala shimmered with forced glamour, crystal chandeliers casting fractured light, champagne flutes clinking like distant gunshots. But beneath the music and laughter, the air was electric with tension, an undercurrent of something about to snap. Arjun and Mira moved through the crowd like soldiers in enemy territory, faces calm, hearts pounding. Rajiv raised a glass in greeting as they passed, his smile sharp. Enjoying yourselves? He asked lightly. Arjun's eyes didn't waver. We're exactly where we need to be, he said. Mira squeezed his hand, her breath shallow. I can't believe it's all come to this. He leaned close, his voice a low murmur. They think this is the end, Mira, but it's only the beginning for us. On the stage at the front of the hall, Suman took the microphone, her voice warm and smooth. Thank you all for being here tonight. It's an honor to stand before you, a family built on trust, on loyalty. Arjun felt the words like acid in his ears. He glanced at Vikram, hidden near the back, his camera trained on the stage, ready. Suman's voice carried on, sweet and poisonous. We have so much to be proud of, so much we've achieved together. Arjun stepped forward, his hand tightening around Mira's. It's time, he said, his voice low, his heart steady. Vikram's voice crackled in his earpiece. Whenever you're ready, Arjun. The world's about to see what they've been hiding. Arjun nodded once, every muscle in his body coiled tight. He could feel Mira's pulse racing under his fingertips. Fear, yes, but something else too. The fierce strength she'd found at his side. He stepped up onto the stage beside Suman, his presence a quiet defiance. If we're going to talk about trust, Suman, let's make sure everyone hears the truth, he said, his voice carrying over the hushed crowd. And as the music faded and the eyes of the room turned to him, Arjun knew this was their moment, the reckoning that would leave no more shadows to hide in. The hall fell into a tense silence as Arjun stood beside Suman, the air electric with unspoken words. He took the microphone from her hand, his fingers steady even as his heart thundered in his chest. Before we toast to trust and loyalty, he said, his voice calm but cutting through the silence. Let's make sure we're toasting to the truth. A ripple of confusion passed through the crowd. Suman's smile froze, her eyes narrowing. Arjun, she said sweetly, her tone a blade sheathed in velvet, this isn't the time, He cut her off with a quiet, unyielding finality. This is the only time. He nodded to Vikram, who stood near the back of the room. In an instant, the screens flickered to life, hidden footage filling the air with damning words and shadows. The broker's voice crackled in the speakers, each word a dagger, no loose ends. Once the money's out, she's the scapegoat. Mira's name will bury it all. Gasps echoed through the hall, the polite laughter gone in a heartbeat. Faces turned pale, eyes wide. Suman's composure cracked, a hairline fracture that deepened with every word. Arjun's voice was calm, each word measured like a soldier's aim. This is what you built, Suman. Lies wrapped in silk. And you thought no one would ever see the truth. Suman's mask slipped completely, her voice a hiss. You think this changes anything? You're just a man playing at heroics, nothing more. He met her gaze evenly, his own voice unflinching. I'm not playing at anything. I'm ending this. Mira's hand found his, her grip trembling but fierce. She stepped closer, her eyes glistening. I believe in you, she whispered. And in that single moment, as the crowd watched the tapes play and the world Suman had built began to crumble, Arjun felt the last of his doubts vanish, replaced by something solid, unbreakable. The tapes ended in a crackle of static, leaving only the echo of Suman's schemes hanging heavy in the air. The guests, men and women in their polished suits and glittering dresses, sat frozen, their expressions a mirror of disbelief and disgust. Rajiv rose slowly from his chair, his face tight with fury. This is slander, he growled, his voice low but shaking with rage. You've twisted our words. Arjun faced him calmly. No, Rajiv. These are your words. Your voices. You thought the world would never see the truth, but here it is, every betrayal, every dirty deal laid bare. Mira stood at Arjun's side, her shoulders back, her voice quiet but clear. You used me. You used my name to cover your crimes. And I won't be your shield anymore. Suman's eyes darted between them, the last of her calm unraveling. You foolish girl, she spat. Do you really think they'll believe you? You're nothing without us. Mira's chin lifted, her voice trembling but strong. I'm everything you're not, Mother. I'm free of your lies now. The room seemed to hold its breath. For the first time, Mira wasn't the quiet daughter or the obedient wife. She was the one who had seen the truth and refused to be silent. Arjun's hand found hers, his fingers squeezing gently. This is your moment, Mira, he murmured. Let them see the woman they can't break. Across the room, the broker turned away, his face a mask of cold indifference, like a rat scuttling for the shadows. But Arjun saw him, and he knew there would be no shadows left to hide in. As the final images flickered across the screens, the weight of the family's betrayal lay naked and raw for all to see. The masks were gone, and there was no turning back. The silence of the room was thick and heavy, broken only by the soft rustle of Mira's dress as she stepped forward, her eyes locked on her mother's. Suman's voice was a low snarl. You're making a mistake, Mira. You think love will save you? It won't. You're nothing without us. Mira's breath trembled, but she didn't flinch. No, I'm nothing without the truth, she said softly. And you'll never understand that. Rajiv slammed his glass down, shards of crystal scattering across the polished table. Enough, he roared, his voice echoing through the hall. You think you've won, Arjun? You've done nothing but bring ruin to your own door. Arjun met his glare without fear. No, Rajiv. I've brought the truth. And that's something you've spent your whole life trying to bury. He turned to the crowd, his voice steady. These people you see before you, they built their wealth on lies and blood. They used Mira as a pawn, thinking she'd never find the courage to stand up. But she has, and I'm standing with her. The room was deathly silent, the weight of his words pressing into every breath. Even the chandelier lights seemed to flicker in that moment, a hushed testament to the reckoning unfolding before them. Suman's lips curled into a cold smile. Then this is war, she said quietly. Arjun stepped closer, his voice unyielding. Then let it be war. He felt Mira's fingers tighten around his. Her voice was a soft whisper in the quiet, a promise spoken into the still air. We'll face them together, she said. He nodded, his eyes never leaving Suman's. Together, he echoed. And in that final moment, amidst the shattered crystal and the ruin of their lies, Arjun and Mira stood as one. The truth was out, the battle was joined, and the war for their souls had begun. The night air outside the mansion was cold, but inside, the heat of betrayal and revelation clung to every breath. The guests began to murmur, some turning away from Suman and Rajiv as if their very presence was poison. Suman's eyes were cold and hard as she turned to Mira. You think you've won some great victory, she said, her voice low and sharp. But this will follow you forever, Mira. The stain of it. You'll never be free. Mira's lips trembled, but she stood tall. It's not a stain, Mother. It's the truth, and I'm done living under your lies. Arjun stepped beside her, his hand resting on her back, a silent shield against the venom in Suman's words. You've built your empire on secrets, he said quietly. But tonight, you're standing in the light, and there's no going back. Rajiv's face twisted in a sneer. You think these people care about your little expose? They're here for the show, nothing more. When the night is over, we'll still be here. We'll rebuild. Arjun's voice was like iron. Not this time. The world's already seen who you are. There's no covering this up. Across the room, the broker slipped away, his shadow merging with the darkness. But Arjun's eyes were locked on Suman and Rajiv. You're finished, he said. Not because I said so, but because the truth never stays buried for long. Suman's mask of calm shattered then, her voice a snarl. You're just a soldier, Arjun. You think your honor matters in a world like this? Arjun didn't flinch. Honor's all I have. And tonight, it's enough to bring you down. After the final words were spoken, the gala crumbled into chaos. Guests whispered in shocked clusters, the once glittering event now a ruin of shattered glass and broken illusions. Arjun and Mira stepped away from the crowd, the weight of what they'd done pressing heavy on their shoulders. In a quiet corner, away from the curious eyes, Mira's breath came in ragged gasps. Arjun, she said, her voice trembling. What if this isn't over? What if they come for us, really come for us? Arjun took her face in his hands, his thumbs brushing her tear-streaked cheeks. Then let them, he said, his voice quiet but unbreakable. They've taken enough from us. They won't take each other. She shuddered in his arms, her voice breaking. I was so scared. I thought I had lost you in all of this. You'll never lose me, he murmured, his forehead pressed to hers. No matter what comes next. Her lips quivered in a fragile smile. I don't know how to be brave like you. He pulled her closer, his voice a low promise. You already are. You stood there tonight, facing your mother, your father. That's more courage than any battle I've ever fought. The truth of it lay between them, raw, exposed, but real. For the first time, Mira felt the weight lift from her shoulders, replaced by something else. The fierce certainty that together, they could face anything. In that moment, under the cold glow of the moon, they shared a quiet vow. No matter what storm waited for them beyond these walls, they would weather it side by side. The next morning dawned cold and quiet. The mansion hushed in a way it had never been before. Arjun and Mira woke to the sound of birds outside. Simple, steady, a sharp contrast to the chaos of the night before. Mira sat up slowly, her hair tangled, her face soft in the gentle light. Do you think it's really over? She asked, her voice a soft question. Arjun brushed a strand of hair from her cheek. It's over for them, he said quietly. For us, it's just beginning. Downstairs, the world was already moving. Police cars lined the drive, officers moving in quiet efficiency. Rajiv and Suman were nowhere to be seen, but Arjun knew it was only a matter of time before they faced the consequences of their lies. Mira's breath trembled as she dressed, her hands shaking. I still feel like I'm dreaming, she whispered. Like I'm waiting to wake up and find it's all still, mine to carry. Arjun pulled her into his arms, holding her close. It's real, he said softly. And it's yours to let go of now. You're free, Mira. She closed her eyes, a tear slipping down her cheek. Free, she repeated, tasting the word like a promise. They walked together through the hushed halls, past portraits of generations that had ruled this house with iron and velvet. At the front door, Arjun paused, his hand resting on the knob. "Are you ready?" he asked. Mira took a breath, her shoulders squaring. "I'm ready," she said, her voice steady. And with that, they stepped out into the winter air, leaving the shadows behind. The sun rose over the mansion, casting long shadows across the marble floors. In the aftermath of the confrontation, the air felt different, like a storm had passed and left only clarity behind. Arjun and Mira stood in the doorway, the cold winter wind brushing against their faces. Officers moved in and out, carrying away files, evidence, pieces of a lie too heavy to hold anymore. Mira's fingers curled around Arjun's. "This house, it's always felt like a prison," she whispered, her voice rough with emotion. "But I see it now. It was never the house, it was them." Arjun glanced back one last time at the grand staircase, the portraits of ancestors who had ruled with iron fists and whispered threats. "They built these walls to keep you quiet," he said softly. "But they forgot you had a voice." Mira swallowed hard, tears brimming in her eyes. "I thought I had to be what they wanted, even if it meant losing myself." Arjun turned to her, his hand on her cheek. "You're not who they made you to be, Mira. You're stronger than their lies. And you're free now." The front door swung open behind them, the final echo of the past slipping away as they stepped out into the light. In the quiet winter morning, they walked to the car, leaving behind everything that had once held them captive. As they drove away, Mira leaned her head on Arjun's shoulder, her breath soft and calm for the first time in years. "Where will we go now?" she asked, her voice gentle. "Wherever we want," he said, a small smile on his lips. "Somewhere we can build something real. No more shadows." She closed her eyes, her heart steady in the knowledge that for the first time, her future was her own. The small cottage on the edge of the forest was a world away from the mansion, simple, quiet, alive with the sound of the wind in the trees. It was theirs now, a place to heal, to begin again. Arjun chopped wood out back, the rhythm steady and grounding. Mira watched from the doorway, a cup of tea warming her hands, her heart lighter than it had ever been. "Do you think we'll ever forget what they did?" she asked one evening, her voice soft, the flicker of the fireplace casting shadows on her face. Arjun looked up, his eyes steady. "We don't have to forget," he said. "We just have to remember that it doesn't define us." She smiled faintly, tears glimmering in her eyes. "I'm learning to live in the truth, to trust in what we have, instead of what they tried to make me believe." He crossed the room, his hand gentle on her cheek. "We built this," he said. "Every day, every breath, it's ours. No one can take that." She rested her forehead against his, her breath a soft sigh. "I'm not afraid anymore," she whispered. "Neither am I," he murmured. "Not when I have you." And in that quiet, in the warmth of their small sanctuary, they found the one thing they'd been searching for all along, not just freedom, but each other. The final reflection as their story closes: "I have to ask you, what would you do if the very people you trusted turned against you? Would you have the strength to fight back, like Arjun and Mira did? Tell me in the comments. Where are you watching from? I want to hear your story too. And if this journey gripped your heart, make sure to like, subscribe, and hit that bell, because the truth deserves to be heard, and your voice deserves to be part of it. Thank you for being here. Let's keep uncovering the truth together.